Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year. Well, we don't quite know. Sometime between the glint of a dying bronze age and the whisper of something darker. Your eyes flicker open, and no, that's not morning light streaming in. That's torchlight, orange, flickering, ancient. And it smells like burnt olive oil and fear. You're lying on something that wants to be called a bed, but let's not flatter it. It's stone, cold, bare, covered in linen stiff with age and rituals. The air is thick. No, not with incense, but with the scent of something older. Gold, dust, and bone. You try to sit up. Your muscles ache like they've carried the weight of generations. Your mouth is dry, parched like a Mycenaean well in midsummer. And then you see it, just across the room, set on a pedestal of limestone, cracked with time and ego. The mask. It gleams with a sickly beauty. A golden face, too smooth, too perfect, with hollow eyes that don't blink, but see. You want to look away, but you don't, because in some twisted part of you, this moment has been waiting for you, long before your bones even learn how to dream. Some call it the Mask of Agamemnon, a name that sounds like thunder wrapped in silk. But there's a problem. Several, actually. First, it was found in a grave that predates Agamemnon by centuries. Second, the man who claimed it was Agamemnon, he was more treasure hunter than scholar. And third, myths don't need to be true. They just need to feel true. Still, there it is. Silent, smiling, timeless. And you, poor thing, you've just trespassed into a legend that doesn't want to be forgotten. The room around you is carved into the belly of a hill, the kind of place where kings rot politely. Stone walls etched with spiral motifs, half erased by earthquakes and neglect. The ceiling hangs low, heavy with the weight of silence. And from that silence echoes, whispers, not voices, just breath, as though the air itself remembers. There are bones here, human, animal, some burned, some curled like they tried to escape even in death. Offerings, they say, for the dead, or the gods, or the performance of memory. Above the mask hangs a small bronze blade, green with time, but still sharp in its heart. It swings slightly, no wind, just memory. You touch your face, no beard, no crown, no armor, just skin, pale, out of place. Like you fell asleep in your apartment and woke up inside a funeral no one invited you to. Outside, you hear the distant groan of earth. Maybe an earthquake, maybe footsteps. You're not sure which would be worse. Because here's the truth no one tells you. The dead don't rest in peace. They rest in memory. And this place, this tomb, this shrine, this lie, is built on memory. False, fractured, and gold-plated. You stand, slowly, cautiously, and the mask, it doesn't move, doesn't flinch. But if you look close enough, you'll swear it knows your name. Maybe that's the curse of touching the past. It begins to touch you back. Welcome, traveler, to Mycenae, to myth, to the mask that hid a kingdom. Sleep will not come easily tonight, but stay. There's more to see, and far more to remember. You stare, not just at it, through it, because the mask doesn't simply rest on its pedestal, it perches. Like a bird of prey made of molten sun, polished with reverence and delusion. Its surface gleams gold, but not the kind of gold you'd want around your neck or in your savings account. No, this gold is heavier, older, the kind that clings to stories like blood on a battlefield, the kind that doesn't forget. You move closer. Its eyes are almond-shaped voids. No pupils, no irises, just absence. And yet they see. You feel it, like a low hum beneath your ribs, a pressure behind your eyes. This is not a mask that was made for beauty. It was made for permanence. To survive the man who wore it. To outlive the myth that named it. Its lips are parted barely. an eternal exhale, or maybe a gas caught in time. There's something strangely modern about its geometry. Smooth, abstract, almost as if the mask was less a face and more an idea of one. A projection of what kings wished they looked like when they died. They say this is Agamemnon. But let's be honest, you've met kings. Most are far less beautiful in death. And yet this thing, it has no rot, no cracks, no chipped teeth, no flaking bronze, no maggots whispering through the sockets. It is too perfect, which in archaeology is just another way of saying, lie to me, please. I want to believe. But it has seen things. Oh yes, it's been here, buried, sealed, mourned, unearthed. It survived looters, earthquakes, and egos big enough to carve their initials into time. And yet it remains. Not because it belongs here, but because we want it to. You reach out. Not to touch it, no. That would be foolish. There are rules, even in dreams. Especially in dreams. But your fingers twitch, aching for contact. Because you wonder, what does the world look like from behind such a mask? What does power feel like when it weighs just a few ounces of gold? Do you become a king? Or do you disappear behind the idea of one? You lean in, and for just a moment, just one soft second, you see something flicker in those hollow eyes. A ship, black sails, a girl screaming for her father, a queen bathing in blood, a soldier dragging his lover's corpse through dust. You blink. It's gone. The mask hasn't moved, but something inside you has. A subtle shift, a crack, not in the tomb. In you, you feel watched, but not in a paranoid way. No, this is different. You are not being observed. You are being remembered. Because this mask, this relic of uncertain kingship, it doesn't just exist in museums or tombs. It lives in textbooks, yes. In documentaries, sure. But more importantly, it lives in every story we've ever told about power. About betrayal. About glory earned too late and love buried too early. That's the thing about gold. It preserves, not truth, but desire. You take a step back. The mask does not follow. It doesn't have to. It has already entered your memory. It will follow you home, into your pillow, into the backs of your eyelids. It will become a symbol, a riddle, a warning. This is not just a funerary mask. It is a question. Who do you become when history puts your face in gold? And more terrifying still, who decides what face gets remembered and which are left to decay? You don't know the answer. Not yet. But the mask waits. It always waits. Tomorrow, we'll open the grave a little further. And maybe, if you're brave enough, you'll begin to understand the kingdom it tried to hide. For now, close your eyes, but not too tightly. The past has a way of slipping through the cracks. It begins, as all delusions of grandeur do, with a man who had too much money and just enough imagination to be dangerous. His name was Heinrich Schliemann, businessman, linguist, self-mythologizing lunatic. A man who learned ancient Greek just to flirt with Homer's ghost. A man who didn't just believe the Iliad was real. He believed it was waiting for him. And he was right. Sort of. You see, Heinrich wasn't trained in archaeology. He was trained in sales. And what is archaeology, if not the world's most expensive form of storytelling? It was the 1870s. Europe was feverish with empire and excavation. The ruins of the ancient world were no longer sacred. They were collectibles. Tombs became trophy cases. Artifacts, proof of national superiority. And Heinrich? He wasn't content to observe history. He wanted to own it. So he went to Greece. Not for the food. Not for the sun. He went for Mycenae. He went for the grave of a king who may never have existed. And when he found it, or rather, when he decided he had found it, he planted his flag like a man claiming the moon. August 1876. Mycenae sleeps under centuries of dust and myth. And here comes Heinrich, sunburnt and euphoric, wearing a linen suit 2 sizes too optimistic, with workers behind him, shovels in hand, and no permits in sight. He digs, with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, with the delicacy of a child tearing open a birthday gift. He tears through layers of time like wallpaper, and then, as if summoned by the gods of good marketing, he finds it. A mask, gold, radiant, eyes hollow, mouth slightly open, frozen in the half-smile of a man who either knew too much or too little. He lifts it from the grave, holds it to the sun like a newborn child, and he declares, not suggests, not hypothesizes, but declares, I have gazed upon the face of Agamemnon. Pause for applause. Of course, the scientific community gasped, not from awe, but from embarrassment. The mask dated to several centuries before the Trojan War, if that war even happened. Agamemnon would have had to be ancient, even for an ancient. But Heinrich didn't care, because archaeology in that moment wasn't about facts. It was about feeling. It was about making the past tangible, visible, photographable. And that mask, that golden, silent lie, it told a better story than any truth could. Heinrich Schliemann, the millionaire with a shovel, didn't just find artifacts. He found myth. Or more accurately, he made it. He published books, posed with a mask, staged photos of his wife wearing ancient jewelry he'd recovered from Troy. Yes, he dug there too. And yes, he bulldozed the upper layers of the site to get to the level he wanted Troy be. Because when you're that rich, even time has to make room for your ego. But let's be fair. Without Schliemann's madness, his arrogance, his recklessness, his obsession, you wouldn't be standing here now, in this tomb, in this dream, staring at this mask. He was wrong, of course. Spectacularly wrong. But oh, wasn't it beautiful? And isn't that the trick? We don't remember him as a fraud. We remember him as a dreamer. Because dreaming sells. And myth is very good business. So now the mask sits in a museum, and they still call it Agamemnon's. Because it's catchy. Because it's easier. Because deep down, we like our lives with just enough truth to sleep soundly. You lean back against the stone wall, the coolness grounding you. The mask is still there, watching, unbothered. It doesn't care what name it was given. It doesn't care who unearthed it, who photographed it, who questioned it. It has outlived them all. It has become what every king hopes to be. Remembered, even if the story was made up by a man with a mustache and no patience. Close your eyes now, traveler. Tomorrow, we'll leave the tomb. Step into the city behind it, Mycenae, where masks are worn not just by the dead, but by every soul who dares to rule. And when you return to this room, if you return, the mask will still be here, waiting, unchanged, and still watching. You leave the tomb. The earth exhales as you step outside, like it's been holding its breath since the last burial. The sun is pale, filtered through mist. Not the golden blaze of Greece on postcards, but a quieter glow, a sleepy kind of warmth. The kind of day that smells like time, old leather, and the sweat of men who work too long for kings they'll never meet. You stand now atop the citadel, Mycenae, the city of Agamemnon. The lion-gated jewel of a kingdom that ruled before Greece was even Greece. And here's the thing, it's smaller than you thought. Isn't it always? We imagine kingdoms like empires, wide, sprawling, glorious. But Mycenae is compact, tense, built like a clenched fist on a hill, defensive, watchful, as if it never trusted the world around it, and maybe for good reason. Below you, the land ripples in dusty greens and ochres, terraces, olive trees, sheep that look like rocks unless they move. It's beautiful in that quiet, uninviting way, like a woman who knows she's being watched and doesn't care. You walk the stone paths, narrow, crooked, smooth by centuries of sandals, wheels, blood. The walls are high, made of cyclopean stones, so big the later Greeks believed only giants could have lifted them. They called it cyclopean architecture because that was easier than admitting. We have no idea how they did this. Inside the palace complex, you smell wine, not the delicate notes of a boutique vintage. This wine is thick, sour, smoked, poured from blackened amphorae into gold-rimmed cups, served by girls whose names aren't remembered, because memory, like wine, was reserved for the powerful, and the powerful lived well. Agamemnon's palace would have had painted walls, maybe red and blue, depicting bulls and gods and wars that hadn't happened yet. There were hearths and thrones, the scent of roasting meat, and gossip thick as perfume. But let's not pretend it was utopia. You want the truth. It was loud, dirty, and brimming with tension. Mycenae was a kingdom stitched together, not with love, but with marriage contracts, military deals, and strategic wine-soaked handshakes. Every alliance was transactional, every bride a treaty with a name, every son a coin tossed into the future. Wives were currency, war was negotiation, and kings? Kings were just the best liars with the best armor. Agamemnon didn't rule because he was noble. He ruled because he had ships, because he knew who to bribe, because he married Clytemnestra, a Spartan princess with a spine of iron and eyes that counted every insult. Together, they were unstoppable, until they weren't. But we'll get there. Right now, you're in the heart of a living kingdom, a city of traders, soldiers, potters, and slaves. Men hammer bronze into blades behind thin cloth curtains. Children chase each other barefoot through alleys that smell like goat piss and figs. Priests pour oil over stone idols while muttering prayers in a language we've only half deciphered. Women grind grain by hand, their backs curved like question marks. And somewhere, always, someone is watching the horizon. Because in Mycenae, enemies are inevitable. They always come. Eventually. The walls of the city weren't built for decoration. They were built for siege. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the heartbeat of this place. Boom, boom, boom. Not drums. Hammers. Soldiers training. The pulse of power echoing through the stone. This is not Athens. There is no democracy here. No marble statues of wisdom or reason. Only kings. Only oaths. Only gold and silence and steel. And yet, there's beauty here. Not the soft kind. The hard beauty of survival. Of people building futures from flint and stubbornness. You lean against the palace wall. It's warm from the sun. Rough. Etched with names now lost. A servant walks by. She doesn't see you. She hums a song no one ever wrote down. A lullaby or a dirge. You're not sure. And for a moment, everything feels real. The sun, the sound, the dust between your fingers. You forget you're dreaming. You forget you're not from here. Because Mycenae has that effect. It pulls you in, makes you part of its machinery. It's hunger. And somewhere, in the royal chambers above you, a man sharpens a decision. A king, a father, a weapon waiting to be used. But we'll meet him soon. For now, rest in the shadow of his walls. There are stories sleeping in the stones, and you've only just begun to hear them. You sit now at the edge of a sunlit courtyard, watching dust twist lazily through a shaft of golden light. A moment of peace, a bowl of olives, maybe even some stolen honey bread. But something feels wrong. The stones beneath you are too warm. The shadows cling to your ankles like they've been waiting. Because this place, Mycenae, was not built on peace. It was built on a curse. A long, ancestral, bone-deep curse that still rots the walls from within. And tonight, We talk about the family who carried that curse like a crown. The House of Atrus. You've heard the name, maybe in passing, maybe in nightmares. But you don't know it yet. Not really, because to know this house is to touch something so profoundly broken, you'll never fully wash it off. It begins, as all truly cursed bloodlines do, with a dinner. And not the good kind. Tantalus, grandfather of Agamemnon, a king, a favorite of the gods. He dined with Zeus, shared ambrosia, whispered secrets, and then, one day, he thought to himself, what if I tested them? What if I cooked my own son and served him to the gods? You blink. Yes, you heard right. He killed his son, Pelops, chopped him up, spiced him like a roast, and served him on a golden platter to immortals, to see if they'd notice. A bold culinary experiment, and not well received. All the gods were horrified, except Demeter. She was distracted, mourning her daughter Persephone, and accidentally ate a piece of the shoulder. Whoops! When they realized what had happened, the gods did what gods do. They got dramatic. They restored Pelops to life, gave him a new shoulder of ivory, a sleek, cold reminder of the meal he'd been part of. Tantalus? He was cast into Tartarus, doomed to eternal hunger, eternal thirst. A fruit tree always out of reach. Water that retreats when he bends to sip. Thus the curse began. But Pelops? He didn't exactly break the chain. He married, naturally, and cheated to win his bride, Hippodamia, by sabotaging her father's chariot. The result? The king died, screaming, with wheels ripping flesh from bone. And Pelops? He covered up the crime, built a kingdom on it. The curse deepened. He had sons, Atrus and Thyestes. Oh, and now things get creative. The brothers hated each other. They fought over women, power, animals, the usual mythological nonsense. Until Atrus, ever the family man, invited Thyestes to a reconciliation banquet. Spoiler alert, it wasn't reconciliation. It was revenge. He cooked Thyestes' children. All of them. Boiled, roasted, served with herbs. Fed them to their own father, unknowingly, and then revealed the truth. Legend says Thyestes vomited, screamed, cursed the entire house. He fled, and somewhere in his grief and madness, he fathered another child, Aegisthus, with his own daughter. Yes, incest, cannibalism, regicide. We're 5 generations in, and the sins are already biblical. Now breathe, because here's where it ties back to you, to Agamemnon, the son of Atrus, a boy raised in a palace soaked in paranoia and butchered bloodlines. A future king whose first lessons weren't diplomacy or poetry, but betrayal and revenge. He and his brother, Menelaus, inherited a kingdom haunted by ghosts that weren't metaphorical. Agamemnon learned young. Power is never given. It is taken, and once taken, it must be protected by any means necessary. This is the house he comes from. A house where fathers murder sons, where brothers poison each other, where dinner is a threat, where curses are cradled like children. And that mask, the one you saw in the tomb, it may wear a neutral face, expressionless, quiet, but behind that gold, centuries of horror, of whispered names and broken teeth and lies sealed in bronze. You walk the halls of Mycenae with different feet now. You understand that the walls weren't just built for war. They were built to keep the family inside, to keep the poison contained. But it never worked. It never could, because some curses are louder than walls. And the House of Atrus, it was always going to break itself. Tomorrow, we meet the bastard waiting in the wings. Aegisthus, born of incest, raised in exile, and destined to be the quietest blade in the bloodiest play. Sleep now if you can, but don't eat anything strange. You never know what family recipe might be on the table. Dinner is served. You're seated now at a table carved from black stone, polished and smooth, but cold beneath your hands. The torches flicker low, casting long shadows across the plates, where steam curls like lazy ghosts. Everything looks perfect. The wine is red, deep, almost purple. The bread is warm. The meat glistens. And yet, you feel sick. Because this isn't a feast. It's a test. And the host, Tantalus, a king once adored by the gods. A man so beloved by Olympus that he sat beside Zeus himself at celestial banquets. He was favored, trusted, given nectar and ambrosia, food for the immortals. He should have been content. But mortals are never content, are they? Tantalus wanted to prove something, to test the gods, to taste divinity himself. And what better way to do that than with a dinner no one would forget? So he called for his son, Pelops, young, beautiful, innocent. He killed him. No ritual, no mercy, no warning. He butchered his own child, dismembered him, boiled him, seasoned the meat with herbs grown under starlight. And then, with the calm of a man who thinks himself clever, he invited the gods to eat. Imagine the moment. Zeus lifting a silver goblet, Hera reaching for bread, Poseidon breaking into laughter at some joke lost to time. Then they see the meat. They pause. They know. They always know. Except one, Demeter, still grieving the abduction of her daughter. Persephone, she eats in silence. One bite, just one, of a shoulder. She chews, swallows, and only then realizes what she's done. The room goes still. No thunder, no fire, no wrath yet, just silence. The kind of silence that splits history into before and after. Tantalus smiles. He thinks he's brilliant. He thinks he's proven something. And that's when the gods speak. Not with words, but with judgment. Pelops is restored, reassembled by divine hands. Every bone returned, every sinew realigned. But the shoulder, the part Demeter ate, is gone. So they craft him a new one. Ivory, white, flawless, gleaming. A scar that never heals. A reminder that he was once food. And Tantalus? He is cast into the deepest pit of Tartarus. Buried in Myth's basement. Trapped in an eternal punishment tailored to his hunger. He stands at a pool of water, clear, cool, inviting. But whenever he bends to drink, it recedes. He reaches for fruit hanging above him. Ripe, golden, heavy. But when he lifts his hand, the branches rise out of reach. Forever. An eternal hunger he can never satisfy. Because when you feed the gods flesh, they do not forgive. And here's the quiet horror. This isn't just a story about a madman. It's a blueprint. A curse carved into bone and passed down like an heirloom. A legacy of betrayal dressed in royal robes. Pelops grows up, marries, has children, one of whom, Atreus, will repeat the cycle. And then Agamemnon, the Golden King, will carry it forward. What began with a father killing his son will end with a daughter sacrificed, a wife turned assassin, and a kingdom built entirely on haunted meals. Because curses don't travel in lightning bolts. They don't scream from the heavens. They whisper at dinner, in lullabies, in the silence after a toast. And the house of Atreus, it learned early that dinner was not about nourishment. It was about domination. To feed is to control. To invite someone to your table is to test whether they'll survive it. And you sit here now, in this dream of ash and gold, still tasting the bitterness of that ancient meat. Even though it's long gone. Even though it never touched your lips. Because some stories feed you whether you want them to or not. Tomorrow, you'll meet the bastard son of this cursed cuisine. Aegisthus, born of incest, raised in exile, and destined to finish what Tantalus began. Sleep now, but if you dream of banquets, beware what's being served. Because in this family, the next meal might be you. You've met the kings. You've walked their halls, tasted their myths, felt the weight of their masks pressing against the glass wall of memory. But tonight, we turn away from the thrones, from the golden masks and the honeyed lies, and descend into a quieter, darker part of the story, where kings are not born, but broken, where vengeance simmers in corners, unloved, unspoken, where Aegisthus waits. You wouldn't notice him, not at first. He wasn't raised in the palace. He wasn't kissed by the gods. There were no laurels for his birth, no hymns written for his name. He was a bastard, in the truest, sharpest sense of the word. The son of Thyestes, the grieving brother who had unknowingly eaten his own children. And his mother? Also Thyestes' daughter. Yes, let's settle. Let it rot in your mind the way it did in his blood. Aegisthus was born not from love, nor accident, but design. A prophecy had spoken. Only a child born of incest can avenge Thyestes. So Thyestes did what desperation demanded. He created the instrument of his vengeance, and then hid him, far from Mycenae, far from the lions carved in stone, far from the curse that birthed him. But curses don't need proximity. They travel through the veins. Aegisthus was raised in exile, not among shepherds, as myths like to pretend, but among whispers, among salt and silence. He grew up lean, sharp, with eyes that saw too much and a mouth that said too little. He didn't fight for glory. He fought to survive, with knives made of bone and a heart that pulsed not with ambition, but calculation. He watched the house of Atreus from afar, its halls, its feasts, its endless cycle of blood and guilt repackaged as destiny. And he waited. He waited through Agamemnon's rise, through Menelaus' marriage to Helen, through the beginning of a war that would last 10 years and kill 10,000 men. He watched as Agamemnon sailed for Troy, confident, victorious, leaving his wife behind, Clytemnestra. And that's when Aegisthus moved, not like a hero charging into battle, but like rust, like mildew, slow, certain, inevitable. He seduced her, or maybe she seduced him, or maybe they recognized something in each other. A mutual ache, a mutual rot. She, the queen left behind, still grieving the daughter Agamemnon had sacrificed like an ox. He, the bastard, sharpened into a blade by prophecy and pain. Together, they became something terrifying. A union not of love, but alignment. Two souls bent in the same direction. Two wounds that formed a single scar. Aegisthus didn't want the throne. Not really. He wanted Agamemnon dead. That was the prophecy. That was the promise. And every day, Agamemnon bled other men dry in Troy. Aegisthus poured wine in Mycenae, whispered in the queen's ear, and made plans. He became the ghost inside the palace walls, the smile behind the curtain, the shadow of vengeance dressed in linen and charm. He was never the hero. He didn't want to be. Heroes die. He wanted to endure. And so he waited, not with patience, with certainty, because in the house of Atreus, death isn't a matter of if. Only when, and here's the horror, you almost sympathize with him, because Aegisthus didn't ask to be born. He was made, molded by curses, shaped by rituals and blood spilled before his first breath. And yet, he became the blade that would end a king. Not on a battlefield, but in a bathtub. No banners, no trumpets, just warm water, a closed door, and the long, soft silence after a neck is cut. But we'll get there. Tonight, you just see him in shadow, sitting by a fire, sharpening a knife that isn't quite a weapon. Not yet. His hands are steady. His eyes are empty. He hums a song his mother used to sing. Or maybe it was his father. Or maybe no one at all. Because when you're born of a curse, sometimes all you inherit is the echo. Tomorrow, you'll meet Cassandra, the girl who saw it all coming, and who no one believed. But tonight, sleep in silence. Aegisthus already knows how this ends, and he's not in a rush. Tonight, you dream of fire. It spreads across polished marble, over sandalwood doors, across silk sheets, still warm with breath. It crackles through palace halls and eats the tapestries first. Stories woven by women who whispered of gods but never prayed to them. The flames don't scream, but she does. You see her now, barefoot on a stone floor soaked in shadow. Hair tangled, dress torn, eyes wide with the weight of knowing. Her name is Cassandra, and her eyes are curse. They say she was born in Troy, daughter of King Priam and Queen Hecuba. Royal, beautiful, beloved, but also strange. Too quiet as a child, too observant. She stared at people the way others stared at omens. There's a story, because of course there's a story, that young Cassandra once fell asleep in the temple of Apollo. She curled beside the laurel and stone, and when no one was looking, the god whispered into her dreams. He kissed her forehead, promised her the gift of sight. He gave her prophecy, but when she refused to love him in return, refused to play his divine puppet, he did what gods so often do when faced with female resistance. He didn't take the gift back. He twisted it. He left her with the ability to see the future. But no one would ever believe her. Not once. Not ever. Imagine that for a moment. To walk through life knowing. Every death, every betrayal, every fire before it burns, every knife before it draws blood. You scream, and the world laughs. You warn, and they shrug. You cry, and they yawn. Cassandra becomes a ghost inside her own body, a prisoner of foresight. She tells her people that Troy will fall, that the Greeks are not gone, that the wooden horse is not a gift, but a grave. They call her mad. They mock her. They drag her away. They say, she sees too much. She speaks too often. She must be broken. Because when a woman knows things, we don't listen. We punish her, and then Troy burns. Just as she said. And she's taken, not killed, not honored. Taken by the man who watched it all from black sails, Agamemnon. He brings her back to Mycenae, not as a queen, not even as a prisoner, as a spoiled trophy, as proof of victory. She walks beside him, silent, eyes open, mouth closed, because she has seen what's coming next. She sees the palace, the wife waiting inside it, the lover behind the curtain, the bathwater that turns red. She sees her own death over and over, like a dream on loop. But no one listens. Not Agamemnon, not the servants, not the gods, especially not the gods. You sit beside her now, in the corner of a stone room. The torchlight flickers against her face, casting shadows under her eyes like bruises made of time. She speaks. Her voice is soft, almost tired. I see it all. The fall of kings, the silence of gods, the blood that flows through marble like a second plumbing. You ask her why she keeps speaking if no one will believe her. She smiles, not out of joy, but because pain this deep eventually becomes a kind of humor. Because someone must, even if it's only the stones that remember. And you believe her. You believe everything she says. But it doesn't matter, because belief isn't the cure. Only fate is left now. In another world, Cassandra might have been a priestess, a healer, a philosopher, a queen. But in this world, she is a warning no one hears, walking straight into her own ending. And the worst part? She knows exactly when it will come, and exactly how little it will matter. Sleep now. Let her voice echo in your dreams. Let it wrap around your breath like incense, sweet and slightly bitter. Because tomorrow, the king comes home, and the door to the palace will close. And when it does, not even prophecy will get out alive. You're dreaming of the sea again, but not the kind that invites. This sea is violet. It snaps at the shore with salt, sick teeth. The sky above it is swollen, full of storm and prophecy. And somewhere beneath that sky, drifting toward the edges of legend, is a ship. On it stands a woman, hair like dusk, eyes like trouble, skin kissed not by gods, but by expectation. Helen. Yes, that Helen. The face that launched 1,000 ships. The name that made men bleed, kingdoms burn, poets weep. The flame at the center of the most famous war in Western memory. But what no one tells you is this. Helen didn't light the match. She was the match. Let's peel back the story. Born from Leda, or maybe a swan, depending on which version of the myth you prefer. Yes, a swan. Because in Greek mythology, consent is optional and zoology is poetic license. Zeus desired Leda. He transformed into a swan, seduced or assaulted her, again, depending on the tone of the storyteller. And from that strange encounter, Helen was born. Not screaming, not crying, just beautiful. So beautiful it became a problem. From childhood, Helen was a prize, not a person. She was courted by kings before she knew how to spell her name in clay. Fought over by men who saw her as territory with cheekbones. Eventually, she was married off to Menelaus, king of Sparta, brother of Agamemnon, a political arrangement disguised as domestic life. And then Paris, a Trojan prince, a guest, a lover, or a thief. He arrives. He sees. He takes. What happened next depends on who's telling the tale. Some say she was kidnapped. Others say she fled. Some whisper that Aphrodite enchanted her, promised her Paris in exchange for a golden apple. But there's a third version, quieter, never sung by bards. She left because no one ever asked her what she wanted. She wasn't in love. She wasn't bewitched. She was tired of being an icon, of being a prize, of being watched, owned, discussed. So she stepped onto that ship, not as a lover or a traitor, but as a woman seeking escape. But escape, in myth, comes with a body count. Menelaus raged, and Agamemnon saw an opportunity. A missing wife was unfortunate, but a violated household? That was cause for war. You see, the Greeks didn't just rally to get Helen back. They rallied because the world had grown too quiet. They needed fire. They needed conquest. And Helen? She became the excuse. A banner. A mythic fig leaf to cover a decade of slaughter. The ships were built. The oaths were sworn. Agamemnon stood at the front of it all, not as a grieving brother-in-law, but as a king with a gleam in his eye. Because Troy was not just a city. It was a rival, a gatekeeper of trade, a symbol of pride, a mirror too perfect to leave unbroken. And Helen? She was no longer a person. She was a storyline. You sit with her now, not in Troy, not in Sparta, but in a liminal place between past and memory. She's older than you imagined, not weary, not bitter, just done. She runs her fingers through the hem of her tunic, brushes invisible dust from her knees, and without looking at you says, "They always forget I had a voice." You asked her what she would have said. She laughs. A soft, tired sound. Nothing. I wouldn't have said anything. They never heard me anyway. She stands, looks out over the sea. The same sea that brought her to Troy. The same sea that would one day bring Agamemnon back to Mycenae. But they burned a city for me, and no one ever asked if I wanted them to. In the distance, you hear drums. Or maybe it's thunder. Or maybe it's just the heartbeat of a myth repeating itself. Because men will always find a reason to go to war. And women like Helen, they will always be the reasons carved in a marble. Sleep now. Let her name linger on your tongue like smoke. Let the waves rock you back into silence. Because tomorrow, Agamemnon will make his most unholy choice. And his daughter, Iphigenia, will pay for it. All for the wind. All for the war. And for a woman who only wanted to disappear. The sky refuses to move. You're standing now at the edge of a shoreline cluttered with ships, black sails, silent crews, bronze shimmering beneath a sun that won't bless them. It's windless, not calm, dead. The sea lies still like a creature pretending to sleep. And the men, they wait. Agamemnon among them. 1,000 ships, 1,000 warriors, all waiting for one invisible thing to shift. But the sky remains stubborn, because the gods are quiet. And when the gods go quiet, you should be afraid. Agamemnon walks the shore with a weight of expectation clawing into his back. This war, this magnificent, poetic, politically convenient war, cannot begin until the ships move. And the ships will not move until the wind returns. And the wind will not return until the gods are pleased. But they aren't. Not yet. And so Agamemnon asks why. The priests gather. They study entrails. They read the twitch of dying birds and call it divine wisdom. And finally, one speaks the words that would split a kingdom. You have offended Artemis. He winces, because he knows what this means. She demands a sacrifice. Not a bull, not a sheep, not grain or gold, or an oath mumbled at dawn. No, she wants Iphigenia, his daughter, young, bright, with hands still callous from childhood, not yet shaped for queendom. The gods demand her, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, Agamemnon hesitates. You feel it, a ripple in the dream, a possible future that never blooms. He could say no, could burn the ships, could march home, could hold his daughter and whisper that no throne, no vengeance, no wind is worth her life. But he doesn't, because the war must happen. Because kings are not fathers, not when prophecy speaks, not when pride listens. And so he writes the letter, invites his wife and daughter to the camp, says there is to be a wedding, to Achilles, to a hero. Joy is summoned, laughter, dresses, bows made from linen and lies. Clytemnestra arrives with Iphigenia, her daughter glowing with the light of a girl who still believes in poems. But there is no wedding, only ropes, an altar, and a silence that is not mercy, but judgment. Some say Iphigenia begged. Some say she went quietly. Some say Artemis changed her mind at the last second, replaced the girl with a deer, carried her off into a holy grove, made her a priestess instead of corpse. But most say she died, mouth open, hands shaking, the salt wind finally stirring, only after the blood spilled. Because the gods did not want a sacrifice. They wanted proof. Proof that men would kneel to them. That kings would kill their own children just to make the skies behave. And Agamemnon gave it to them, without flinching. You sit now by the altar long since abandoned. The stones are stained. The sea is restless again. The sails ripple with eagerness. And you feel cold, not because of the wind, because of what obedience looks like when love is not enough. Because this wasn't just a sacrifice. It was a message. The war has not even begun, and already its first casualty is a girl who never lifted a sword. Her name is carved into the tide. You can almost hear it if you lean close. Iphigenia, Iphigenia, Iphigenia. Agamemnon boards his ship. He looks back only once. Not at the altar, not at the priest, at the shore, at the place where his wife stood, screaming. But she's gone now, and the wind is rising. Sleep now, if you can. Let the waves rock you. Let the salt sting your eyes. Let the whisper of her name follow you into your dreams. Because tomorrow we cross the sea, to Troy, to betrayal, to fire, and the war that one man believed was worth the death of his daughter. The ships arrived like a plague, one by one, sails filled with borrowed wind, hulls heavy with bronze and hope and hunger. 1,000 black shapes against a horizon that was never meant to carry so many. The sea had opened, reluctantly, in Troy. Troy did not blink. From the beach, it looked untouchable, a city of stone and gold, perched upon pride. Walls taller than the sky dare to be. Gates carved with lions and gods and warnings. It wasn't built to impress. It was built to defy. And now, standing there, soaked in sea brine and silence, Agamemnon saw his own reflection in those walls. Because Troy was not just a city. It was a mirror. You walk the outer plain now, your feet crunching over dry earth where bodies will one day fall. But today it is quiet. Too quiet. The Greeks have made camp. Rows of tents stretched like scars across the coastline. Men sharpen blades that have not yet tasted blood. Others sing songs to gods that no longer listen. Agamemnon stands above them all. His armor polished. His eyes dull. He has come to take back his brother's wife. That is the story. But stories lie. What he wants, what he has always wanted, is to own something no other man can. To claim a city that the world whispered about in awe. To raise it to the ground and say, I did this. Because kings do not wage war for women. They wage war for names. To carve them into stone. To echo across time. Troy answers not with fear, but with poise. Inside the walls, the people move like a heart that refuses to beat faster under pressure. Markets buzz. Children play. Priests burn incense. And Priam, the king, stands beneath the palace archway and watches the horizon darken with sails. He does not tremble. He has lived too long to be moved by theatrics. He knows this will not be a battle. It will be a season, and Troy will not fall quickly. The war begins as wars always do, with speeches and confidence. And then comes the first death. Not a hero, just a soldier, nameless, forgotten before his body cools. Then another, and another. Soon, the sand is no longer white, and Troy begins to feel less like a city and more like a wound. Years pass. Yes, years. 10 of them. The war that was supposed to be swift becomes a myth in real time. Children grow up between sword swings. Lovers age, waiting for letters that will never come. Agamemnon watches it all from his black ship, anchored just off the beach. He does not fight, not like Achilles, not like the others. He commands. He broods. He counts supplies. He writes home in short, unsent letters. The walls still stand. The men grow restless. I cannot sleep. He does not mention the girl, the one he sacrificed, but her name lingers in his mouth like ash. And what of Troy? It holds, because Troy is not a city made of walls and brick. It is made of belief. It is the idea that not everything can be taken. That pride, like stone, can endure siege after siege and not crumble. But ideas grow heavy over time. And even stone forgets how to hold itself together when the cracks go deep enough. One night, you find yourself walking its inner streets. Not the real Troy. She's buried somewhere beneath your feet. But the dream of it. The hum of life before the collapse. You smell roasted meat. You hear the laughter of someone who still believes tomorrow is real. A girl brushes past you. She's holding a clay jug, and she hums a song her grandmother taught her. She doesn't know. She doesn't know the horse is coming. She doesn't know that Cassandra is already weeping in her sleep. She doesn't know her city is a myth unfolding towards end. And part of you wants to scream, to warn her, to say leave now, run, hide. But you don't, because this is not your time. It never was. Troy endures, and in enduring, she becomes more than real. She becomes a reflection of every city that believed it could not fall, of every king who thought he could not lose, of every woman who vanished in a legend. And as Agamemnon watches those golden gates shimmer in the distance, he does not see a city. He sees a version of himself, walled, worshipped, doomed. Sleep now, with Troy in your lungs. Let the salt settle on your skin. Let the drums fade into the surf. Because tomorrow, Achilles arrives, and the war stops being quiet. The banners are tattered. The music has stopped. The speeches have long since faded into forgettable echoes, and the only thing left in the camp is the sound of breathing. Thousands of chests rising and falling in a kind of synchronized exhaustion. 10 years. 10 years of siege, sunburns, bronze clashing against bronze, blood sinking into the sand like wine into old wood. And still, Troy stands. Its towers lean slightly now. Its gates creak like old bones. But it still stands. And the Greeks? They have not become legends. They have become maintenance workers for a myth that refuses to cooperate. You walk the camp today, not as a soldier, as a shadow, as someone watching what it looks like when a war forgets what it's for. There is no battle this morning, just laundry, washing linen in muddy troughs, sharpening swords that haven't seen blood in weeks, scrubbing armor not for pride, but because rust is faster than enemies these days. A young man sits on a rock, whittling his stick into nothing. He does not notice you. He mutters something to himself, over and over. A girl's name, maybe, or his own. After a while, the names blur together. Agamemnon watches from his tent. Not regal, not divine, just tired. He's lost men, ships, time, but not his temper. No, that he keeps polished and ready. He rules the Greek camp not through charisma, but through order and fear, because the longer the war drags on, the thinner the line between loyalty and mutiny. He rations wine with the precision of a priest, controls supplies like a miser controls coins. He tells stories about Troy falling soon, even though he no longer believes them himself. Some days, he writes messages to Clytemnestra. We're close. They can't hold much longer. Tell the boys I'll be home soon. But he never sends them, because he knows, deep down he knows, there is no home waiting for him, only reckoning. Meanwhile, the war drips forward, like honey in winter. Thick, slow, too sweet to forget, too sticky to escape. The gods are mostly silent now. Their early theatrics have grown bored. No more plagues. No more omens, just dust. Every now and then, a hero dies. And for one day, the camp remembers how to mourn. There is a fire, a feast, a song. Then the body burns. The ashes scatter. And the name is carved into the side of someone's dream. Until it fades. You sit near the shoreline, where the wreckage of old ships bob gently in the waves. The sea has grown used to the war. It doesn't protest anymore. Some of the men stare out at it like it might forgive them. Like maybe if they just stared long enough, a wind would rise and carry them home. But the sea doesn't forgive, and neither does time, because that's what this war has become. Not a struggle of armies, but a war against duration. It is the slow erosion of purpose. The kind of war that doesn't end with victory, but with forgetting why it started at all. You find Agamemnon one evening sitting alone by a dead fire. He doesn't speak, doesn't gesture, just looks at you like a man who has outlived his own story. You ask him what he's waiting for. He doesn't answer, but if he did, it might sound something like this. Not Helen, not Troy. I'm waiting for it to mean something. Anything. Before I go home and answer for what I've done. He doesn't say it. He doesn't have to. Sleep comes harder in the 10th year, not because of nightmares, but because the dreams have stopped. There's no glory left, no songs waiting to be sung, just men sleeping in shifts, hoping tomorrow brings either peace or death, because both feel like freedom now. Rest, traveler. The dust hasn't settled yet, but soon something will break, and when it does, the name Achilles will become a storm, and no one, not Agamemnon, not Troy, not even the gods, will sleep through what comes next. The silence does not last. It never does. It's broken one morning by a voice that does not ask. It declares. And when the men of the Greek camp hear it, they do not cheer. They listen, because when Achilles speaks, you do not interrupt. You remember. He enters like a comet someone forgot to name. Barefoot, sunburnt, hair wild with sea wind and sleeplessness. Not wrapped in gold or iron, but in something older, something sharper. Conviction. He does not kneel to Agamemnon. He doesn't even look at him, because Achilles is not here to bow. He is here to remind the Greeks why they ever believed in war. Not for strategy, not for honor, not for kings, but for the beauty of a blade moving faster than a lie. You see, Achilles is not like the others. He wasn't born in a palace. He was born from prophecy. His mother, Thetis, a sea goddess, tried to make him immortal, held him by the heel, dipped him into the river Styx. Every part of him became invulnerable, except for the place she held, the heel. A simple mistake, or maybe a poetic one, because even the most invincible man must have a place where the gods can whisper, "Not so fast." Agamemnon watches Achilles with quiet disdain. He needs him. He hates that he needs him, because while Agamemnon is a king, crowned, respected, obeyed, Achilles is a force, uncrowned, unrepentant, uncontrollable. He fights not because he's ordered to, but because he's called to, and men follow him not out of loyalty, but out of awe. That's the difference. Agamemnon governs with rules. Achilles governs with presence, and it drives the king mad, because the men don't sing songs of Agamemnon around the fire. They sing of Achilles, how he moves like lightning, how he can fell 10 men with one breath, how even the gods lean closer when he lifts his spear. Agamemnon sees it, feels it, and slowly, the envy turns toxic. He finds a way to hurt him. One night, a slave girl, Briseis, is brought to Achilles after a raid. It's not love, but there's something in the way he looks at her. A quietness, a rare softness. Agamemnon sees that too, and he takes her, not because he wants her, but because Achilles does. Because if he can't be the greatest, he'll make sure no one else is either. The next morning, the storm breaks. Achilles returns to his tent, silent, still. He does not scream. He does not weep. He simply stops. Stops fighting. Stops commanding. Stops being the thing the Greeks need most. And the war, like a severed limb, begins to rot. You sit outside his tent, listening to the waves slap the shore like slow applause. He hasn't emerged in days. The men grow restless. The camp sags like a lung without air. And still, Agamemnon says nothing, because pride is a blade with no handle. You grip it and bleed. In this stillness, Achilles becomes something else. Not a man, not a hero, a myth in waiting. He sharpens his spear until the wood groans. Talks to no one, breathes in smoke, remembers his mother's warnings. If you stay, you'll die, but your name will live forever. If you leave, you'll live, but no one will remember your face. He chose to stay, and now he wonders what forever feels like when you're still breathing. Agamemnon? He begins to crumble. Without Achilles, his war becomes a sandcastle, impressive but doomed. Troy holds. Greek morale dissolves, and in the space between rage and regret, Agamemnon finally understands. You cannot command fire. You can only beg it not to burn you. Sleep now. The silence has teeth. And soon, the name Patroclus will enter the story, and Achilles will burn everything that breathes. But for now, listen to the wind. Even it is afraid to speak his name too loudly. Before the rage, before the fire, before the name Achilles became a war cry, there was Patroclus. And before you think you know this part, pause. Because history likes its heroes loud, covered in bronze, with blood on their hands and speeches in their mouths. But Patroclus was quiet. He didn't want glory. He didn't chase it down like a hound chasing thunder. He wasn't born to kill. He was born to hold someone together. And sometimes, that's the hardest job in a war. You first see him in the corner of Achilles' tent, a blur of linen, a silhouette curled beside a low-burning lamp. He's threading a needle through torn leather, quiet, careful, patient. He doesn't look up, because Patroclus doesn't perform for attention. He builds around it. His hands have stitched more wounds than they've caused. His words have calmed more storms than they've started. And in a world where every man wants to be a lion, Patroclus chose to be a harbor. They grew up together, he and Achilles, taught the same songs, trained with the same spears, ate the same dried figs beneath the same olive tree. But where Achilles burned, Patroclus warmed. Where Achilles struck, Patroclus soothed. And while the poets later debated whether they were friends or lovers, the truth is simpler and heavier. They were each other's home. During the war, Patroclus was the one who made sure men didn't starve, who mended the injured, who remembered the names of those the songs would forget. While Agamemnon barked orders and Achilles brooded, Patroclus watched, listened, waited. And when Briseis was taken, when Achilles went silent, Patroclus stayed. He didn't push, didn't beg. He just sat by the fire every night, slowly adding wood, making sure the flame never died, because he knew something that the kings never did, that sometimes the only thing keeping a man from breaking is knowing someone is still waiting for him to come back. But war is not kind to softness. One day the tide turned. Troy pushed back. The Greeks panicked. Agamemnon looked to his generals. Odysseus schemed. Menelaus prayed. But the only name they needed, the only one who could win the war, was Achilles. And he would not fight. He sat, still as stone, his grief calcified into silence. So Patroclus stood, walked into his tent, knelt beside him, and said what no soldier had dared to. "Let me wear your armor." It was a gamble, a deception. If the Trojans thought Achilles had returned, they might retreat. And for a while, it worked. Patroclus charged into battle wearing his friend's glory. The armor fit wrong. Too heavy, too loud, but he wore it anyway. Because sometimes, to protect someone, you have to become what they want. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Because he wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting by time. For the Greeks. For Achilles. For the myth to catch up. He pushed the Trojans back. Killed more men than history bothered to name. And then, Hector, the prince of Troy, the son of Priam, the city's heartbeat. He saw the shining armor. He charged. He struck. And Patroclus fell. When the helmet was removed, Hector didn't recognize the face, because it wasn't Achilles. It was no one. A boy who never wanted to be a hero, who wore another man's name to stop a war, and died for it. You sit beside his body now, not yet cold, the blood still warm in the dust. Achilles hasn't arrived, but when he does, you'll hear a kind of scream the gods pretend not to understand. Not rage, not vengeance, not even grief. Just loss, pure and untranslatable, the kind that bends history. Sleep now. Patroclus rests, but Achilles is about to wake. And the war? It's about to remember why it began. The walls of Troy no longer glisten. They lean now, cracked, weary, like an old man at the end of a long story he no longer enjoys telling. Inside, the city exhales. For the first time in 10 years, there is no sound from the Greek camp. The beach is empty. The ships are gone. The tents dismantled. The war, it seems, is over. The people of Troy cheer. Children run through the streets. Merchants reopen stalls that had long been gathering dust. And women throw flower petals from rooftops like rain for the dead. You walk through the city as they celebrate. And, with a cold weight in your chest. They're already dead. At the heart of the city, in the main square, stands a gift. Massive, wooden, silent. A horse. Its body is stitched from planks of cedar and pine. Its eyes are hollow. Its mouth does not move, but its presence screams. Taller than a temple. Bigger than belief. It arrived as if summoned by fate, dragged into the city after being discovered on the empty shore. An offering, they say, a symbol of surrender, a monument of peace, left behind by the Greeks. A final bow. And here's the thing about humans. We love closure. We are hungry for endings, even when they are made of wood and suspicion. Even Cassandra warned them. She stood in the square, hair tangled, eyes bloodshot, fingernails cracked from clawing at stone. She shouted until her voice became dust. Don't bring it in. It's full of men. It's full of knives. It's not a gift. It's a funeral. But they laughed. They always laugh at her. They've made a habit of not listening. So the horse entered the gates, dragged in by ropes, with cheers and drums and relief. Troy, the proud city, held its breath and swallowed a lie. That night, the stars hid behind clouds. The moon turned her face away, and the people of Troy slept like fools in a fairy tale. They dreamed of peace, of harvest, of healing. They slept, believing the storm had passed. But the storm was already inside. You walk quietly through the streets, your feet echoing on the stones. There is no music now, only the creaking of the great horse as it shifts ever so slightly in the wind. You pause. You hear it, breathing. From inside, the breath of men hunched in silence. Swords clutched, eyes wide, waiting for the signal. And at midnight, when the fires burn low and the last prayers have softened into dreams, the trapdoor opens. They spill out like oil on water. Greek soldiers, elite, prepared, Odysseus among them, clever, grinning, merciless. Men who have waited a decade for this single moment. They open the gates. The ships return. Thousands pour in like the tide. And Troy, once the city of song and starlight, begins to burn. Not slowly, violently, with fire that does not ask for permission, with screams that reach the heavens, with blood that soaks into temple floors once reserved for prayers. And where is Agamemnon? At the front, watching, smiling, maybe, because this is not victory. This is validation. A city that stood in his way is now falling at his feet. It does not matter that the method was deceit. It does not matter that Troy believed in honor. Troy is ashes now, and ashes do not speak. You find Cassandra in the temple of Athena. She kneels at the altar, not praying, just watching the flames crawl toward her. She does not scream this time. There is no need. This is the moment she saw 1,000 nights ago. She turns to you, her voice calm. I told them, and still it came. That is the curse. A soldier grabs her, chains her, drags her to Agamemnon as a prize. And she does not resist, because she has already seen what happens next. You walk through Troy now barefoot. The ground is hot, the air thick. Smoke wraps around your shoulders like a funeral shawl. You see mothers searching for sons, fathers dying with swords still sheathed, children with soot in their lungs and wonder in their eyes. You see a city realizing too late that myths are not kind. They do not spare the innocent. They feed on beauty, on belief, on a need to believe the war is over. Sleep now. What's done is done. But the fire has not finished. It follows Agamemnon now, back across the sea, back to a wife who waits, and to a bath drawn not with perfume, but with blood. The sails are full, the sea is calm, and Agamemnon smiles. Not the smile of a man at peace. He hasn't known peace in years. This is the smile of a man done. Done with war, done with hunger, done with glory. He believes he's returning to a kingdom waiting with open arms. He believes his name is now carved into the bones of history. He believes the gods are finally quiet. He believes far too much. The ship crests the hill of waves, and there, on the horizon, is Mycenae. Stone upon stone, Cyclopean walls kissed by morning light. The city hasn't changed, but he has. His face is older. His eyes no longer sharpen with rage, but dull from memory. He carries the weight of 10 years of blood, of bones, of girls in temples crying for mercy. And behind him, Cassandra. She walks silently, eyes low. She knows what's coming, but she says nothing, because Cassandra's words never save anyone. They only haunt the silence afterward. You walk beside Agamemnon now, down the marble steps of the palace. The air smells like rosemary and something else, something sweet. It takes a moment to recognize it. Not perfume, not flowers, wine, too much of it, spilled, fermented in the cracks of the stone. And beneath it all, oil, the kind you pour on fire, or corpses. At the gates, she waits. Clytemnestra, queen, mother, widow, wife, and something else, something colder. Her dress is red, not deep crimson, not ceremonial, just red enough to stain without notice. Her hair is pin high. Her hands are still. She smiles, but it's not joy, it's practice. Agamemnon greets her the way men greet statues. He assumes they are still. He assumes they remember him the way he left. He doesn't see the grief that has fermented into vengeance. He doesn't see the ghost standing behind her eyes. He doesn't hear the voice of Iphigenia in the space between their greetings. "Hello, wife," he says. "Welcome home," she replies. Not king, not husband, just man. They enter the palace. A feast is laid, too perfect, too generous. Roasted lamb, honey-glazed fruits, bread so fresh it still weeps steam. She pours the wine herself, touches his cup with fingers that once cradled the head of the daughter he killed. And still, he doesn't see it, because men like Agamemnon are taught to read everything but rage on a woman's face, especially when it's quiet. Later, she draws him a bath. The room is warm. Steam fogs the stone walls. The oil smells of lavender and laurel. He undresses, steps into the water. It cradles him like a lover. He sinks, exhales, closes his eyes, and when they open again, she is there, above him, holding something. A net? No, a cloth. Thick, coarse, wet. She throws it over his face, and then the knife follows. Some say she stabbed him once. Others say it was 3 times. One for each of their children. One for each year he was gone. One for Iphigenia. The water turns red. Not instantly. Slowly, like ink dropped into a dream. Cassandra is killed next. No ceremony. No hesitation. Because prophets make poor witnesses. And when it's over, Clytemnestra does not cry. She walks out of the room. Clean. You sit now by the still warm water. You stare into the bath. The king is gone. But not really. Because death is never the end in stories like these. It's just the door you walk through to become legend. And Agamemnon? He will not be remembered for victory. He will be remembered for this. For what he brought home. And what waited for him there. Sleep now. There's no more war tonight. Only blood cooling on marble. And a kingdom trying to decide if justice feels like peace. But this story is not done. Not yet. Orestes is still a boy. And boys remember everything. You don't remember falling asleep, but you wake up in her chambers. It's not what you expected. There are no daggers on the walls. No blood-soaked veils. No portraits of dead kings. Just silence. And mirrors. Everywhere. They reflect the candlelight in fragments. They reflect you. And in all of them, standing quietly, is Clytemnestra. Not the woman from earlier. Not the one who greeted her husband with politeness carved from ice. This one is real. Barefoot. Her robe undone. Her hand stained. Not from a bath. Not from food. From memory. They say she smiled when she killed him. But the truth is stranger. She didn't smile. She held her face like a mask slipping off slowly. She looked him in the eyes. Not as a queen. Not even as a wife. But as a mother who watched her child dragged to the altar by the man who once promised her stars. They think Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon for power. They're wrong. She killed him for clarity, because for 10 years, she lived in a kingdom that praised a murderer. Because for 10 years, she dreamed of Iphigenia's last breath. Because for 10 years, no one else seemed to care that a girl had died so the wind could rise. So she made them care. She took the very tools Agamemnon used, deceit, ceremony, spectacle, and turned them inward. You sacrificed her for a war, she whispered. Now I sacrifice you for peace. And still, people call her villain, as if revenge is not a form of grief wearing armor, as if men who kill in battle are heroes. But women who kill in their homes are monsters. You see the difference now. Clytemnestra didn't bathe in glory. She bathed in blood, but it wasn't a celebration. It was a funeral that no one else would give her daughter. She walks past you in the dream, doesn't speak. Her presence feels like a storm has decided to take human form just to sit for a moment. You ask her, softly, if she regrets it. She stops, doesn't turn, just says, "He didn't scream." Then she smiles. And it's the most terrifying smile you've ever seen. Not because it's cruel, not because it's triumphant, because it's free, because it's the smile of a woman who has lived through fire and no longer fears it. You leave the chamber. The hall is darker now. You can hear whispers behind the stones. Not words. Names. Iphigenia, Cassandra, Electra, Orestes. The house of Atreus is still breathing, still plotting, still pulling its descendants down like roots growing into rot. Clytemnestra rules now. She walks the halls in crimson, holds court with eyes that never blink. She feeds the people. She repairs the walls. She wears the crown Agamemnon once claimed, but hers fits differently, because it wasn't given to her. She took it, and there's something holy about that, something that makes the gods twitch. Because justice, when wielded by a woman with nothing left to lose, becomes prophecy. Sleep now, but sleep carefully, because the palace is still warm with vengeance. And vengeance has a scent, and the boy upstairs, Orestes, has just begun to smell it. The room is warm, too warm. You step into the chamber, and the steam meets you like breath, heavy, moist, fragrant with crushed herbs. Lavender, thyme, and something sharper. Something you can't name, but your body knows it. Fear. It lingers here. Not loud, not screaming. It's the quiet kind, the kind that seeps into your skin like oil and never leaves. The tub rests in the center of the room, carved from stone, polished smooth, the size of a coffin, but filled with water the color of moonlight. This is where it ends. Not on a battlefield, not with swords clashing or gods howling. Here, in the soft sigh of steam, in the drip of condensation down painted walls, in the hands of a wife who has waited 10 years to open her throat and let silence speak. Agamemnon enters. He moves slowly, not with the confidence of a returning hero, but with the stiffness of a man who has mistaken survival for absolution. His robes fall away. He steps into the water. It welcomes him, wraps around him. He sighs, not because he is at peace, because he thinks he is, because kings like Agamemnon always believe the worst is behind them, as if their crimes have an expiration date, as if murder turns into myth the moment it becomes inconvenient. The bath begins to cool. He leans back, his eyes close, and somewhere behind the curtain, she waits. Clytemnestra, hair pinned tight, dress clinging to skin made slick with sweat and restraint. She holds a blade, not long, not ceremonial, a working knife, meant for meat and memories. She steps forward. Her feet make no sound. She does not tremble. The steam clings to her like a shroud. She watches him for a moment, not as a man, as a symbol, as the last obstacle between her and justice. He opens his eyes. Too late. She moves. The cloth drops first. A net, some say. A robe, others say. Whatever it was, it blinds him. She covers his face, pins his arms. The water sloshes. He thrashes, but not for long, because the knife comes next, straight into the chest. Then again, then lower. Some say she stabbed him 3 times. Once for the daughter he sacrificed. Once for the years she mourned in silence. And once for herself, for the version of her that died the day he told her it had to be done. He does not scream. That's the part everyone agrees on. No scream, no curse, just a grunt, a sigh, and then stillness. The water turns red, softly, like a secret finally spoken aloud. Clytemnestra stands there for a while, knife in hand, blood dripping from elbow to wrist. The blade doesn't shake, not because she feels nothing, but because she has already felt everything. This isn't rage. This isn't madness. This is judgment. You sit beside the tub now. The body is still inside, eyes open, mouth half-parted. You wonder what he saw in his final moment. Her face, his daughter's, his kingdom falling apart like brittle bone, or maybe just water, because men like Agamemnon only understand the world when it reflects them. And this time, it didn't. She leaves the room, doesn't wash, doesn't look back. Outside, the servants freeze. No one speaks, because something sacred just happened, something final. The queen has become a reaper, and the reaper does not answer to the living. Sleep now, but don't dream of kings. Tonight, you sleep in a house ruled by memory. And memory, once awoken, never sleeps again. You hear it before you see her. A humming, low, monotone, too soft to be music, too steady to be madness. It's a sound you might mistake for wind whistling through old stones. But it's her, Cassandra. And the moment you enter her chamber, you understand. She has already seen everything. The air is cold, colder than it should be. The fire has long gone out, but the walls still sweat, as if they too are trying to forget. She sits on the floor, not tied, not caged, just sitting, as if she belongs to this ruin now. The red silk from Troy still drapes her shoulders. Dust clings to the hem. Her hair is tangled in knots that no comb could undo. Her eyes are open, but they do not blink, because blinking would mean believing this is real. And for Cassandra, the real world was always secondary to the one she could see coming. She knew it would end like this. Not because she guessed, not because she feared, because she was cursed by Apollo for denying him, for refusing to lie beneath a god who trades vision for vanity. He gave her foresight, and when she spurned him, he let her keep it, but twisted it. She could see the future, but no one would ever believe her. You kneel beside her now. She doesn't flinch. She speaks softly. Her voice is not broken. It's preserved. Like honey, like bones under glass. They say the gods are silent, she whispers. But I hear them. Always. Every time a child cries for a father who will never come home. Every time a king pretends a sacrifice is strategy. Every time a woman bleeds on tile, and they call it cleansing, she touches the floor beside her, as if the stone remembers. And then her voice changes, grows faster, not louder, but urgent, like thunder whispering through the veins of the earth. He is dead, but he's not gone. She will not rule long. The sun is coming, and the sun will carry a knife made of memory and myths and matriarchal blood. She looks at you now, directly, as if she sees past you. Tell them, tell the world, that this house is not cursed by gods. It is cursed by men who think they are. She stands. You didn't see her rise. She walks slowly toward the hallway. 2 guards wait there. They don't speak. She does not scream. She does not plead. Because what is death to a woman who has seen her end every night since she was 12? They take her by the arms, and as they walk, she speaks again. One final time, not to them, to the walls, to the stones, to history itself. I saw the horse. I saw the fire. I saw the sea swallowing ships like prayers unspoken. I saw a child weeping in a city built on lies. I saw the knife, and I saw the boy. He will come, and the gods will turn their heads again. They drag her to the chamber, to the place where Agamemnon's blood still slicks the tiles. She does not fight, because Cassandra never fought fate. She just named it, over and over, until it devoured her. You're alone now. The air is still, but her words linger like smoke in a burnt temple. She is gone, but her voice, unkillable. Sleep now. Let her words braid themselves into your dream, because what comes next is not peace. It is a son with vengeance in his spine, and even the gods will watch in silence. You open your eyes, but it isn't morning. It's that hour before sunrise, when the world forgets who it is for a while, when shadows cling to the corners of the room like memories too soft to name. And in the corner of the palace, curled beneath a heavy tapestry, Orestes watches. He is young, no more than 10, face still soft, knees bruised from climbing trees meant for older boys. But his eyes, they are wrong, not in color, in weight. They carry something, not grief, not fear, witness. You see, no one told him what had happened. They didn't need to. He heard it, the wet sound of the knife, the gurgled breath of his father, the way the marble echoed with something more final than words. And the silence after, even louder. He didn't cry. Not then. Not when Clytemnestra walked past him with blood still drying on her wrists. Not when they carried Cassandra's body out under a moon too tired to weep. Not when the priest came and scrubbed the tiles and pretended it was just water. He didn't cry. He remembered. You follow him now through the back corridors of the palace, past the doors that don't creak anymore, past the columns where servants used to laugh. He moves like smoke, careful, soundless, because in this house, noise is punished with truth, and truth hurts, especially when it shares your blood. He stops at the old temple, the one they sealed when the gods stopped listening. There's a crack in the wall. He presses his hand to it, closes his eyes, and speaks the only prayer a child can make in a house like this. Let me remember. Let me stay angry long enough to become something they fear. The nursemaids say he's quiet, polite, smart. They don't see the way he counts footsteps in the dark, the way he watches Clytemnestra not like a mother, but like a problem. He isn't waiting for her love. He's waiting for his moment. Because boys in palaces don't grow up. They harden. One night, he sneaks into the old storage hall, finds a cloth, still stained, faded, but the mark is there. He runs his finger over it like a wound still whispering. And he doesn't flinch, because Orestes is not afraid of blood. He's afraid of forgetting what it's for. He doesn't speak much anymore, but sometimes he repeats a name, softly, without context. Iphigenia. He never met her. She was gone before he was old enough to remember the sound of her name on anyone's lips. But he knows her story. Cassandra made sure of that. She told him everything, before they took her, before they silenced her. And her final words to him? Not prophecy, not poetry, just this: don't let them bury you in forgiveness. He carries it like armor, while Clytemnestra kisses him goodnight with a mouth that smells like rosewater and secrets. He closes his eyes and pictures her with a knife in her hand, just to remember what she's capable of, just to stay ready. One day he'll leave. They'll send him away. For schooling, they'll say. For safety. But deep down, Clytemnestra knows why. Because the child she bore is not a boy anymore. He's a blade, being sharpened in silence, waiting, You stand beside him in the dark now. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't need to, because boys like Orestes are never truly alone. They walk with the dead, with names burned into their thoughts like curses. Agamemnon, Iphigenia, Cassandra, and at the center of it all, her, the woman who gave him life, and took it from everyone else. Sleep now, but keep one eye open, because Orestes is awake, and when he returns, the gods will be watching again, but they won't stop it. Time passes, but not the kind you feel. This is heavy time, the kind that weighs on a house like dust in the lungs. You don't see it until you start to choke. Clytemnestra rules. With grace, some say. With iron, others murmur when she's not listening. She walks through the halls like they're hers. Because they are. Every corridor, every column, every shadow. She has replaced the scent of Agamemnon's sweat with cinnamon oil and fig. But beneath it, the smell of murder still lingers. Not because she left a trace, because the walls remember, and so does Orestes. He's gone now, sent away before the whispers grew too loud, before the servants began bowing to him a little too long, before he began asking too many questions that didn't sound like a child's curiosity, but like a trial already underway. They said he needed education. What he got was distance. What he took was perspective. You find him years later, not in a palace, not in a temple, but at the edge of a wildwood, speaking to a man with eyes like shattered bronze. Pylades, friend, shield, co-conspirator. They walk side by side without speaking, because true brothers don't need conversation. They need only the shared understanding of what must be done. And Orestes? He understands. He always did, but he's not the same boy anymore. His hands are larger, his eyes darker, his silence is deeper. He doesn't ask what happened that night. He knows. The dreams told him. The gods told him. Even the birds in the trees seemed to whisper it. Clytemnestra did not kill Agamemnon. She ended him. There's a difference. One is murder. The other is a sentence passed by someone with a reason. Orestes has learned the difference, and he's ready to decide what kind of death she deserves. He prays now, not like the priests taught him, not on polished marble floors or with rehearsed invocations. He kneels in the dirt, among roots, bare-chested beneath a sky thick with cloud, and he whispers, "If this is justice, give me a sign. If this is revenge, let be mine." The wind doesn't answer. The gods remain mute, but something in him stirs, and that is enough, because vengeance is not a commandment. It's a hunger, and Orestes is starving. Meanwhile, back in Mycenae, Clytemnestra watches the horizon. She knows he's out there. She tells herself he won't come back, but some nights she wakes in sweat, hearing footsteps in the hall that aren't there, seeing a shadow in the doorway that fades when she blinks. She still wears the crown, still holds a court, but her hands tremble now when she holds a goblet. Not from age, from memory, because she didn't just kill a king. She raised a son, and sons return. You walk with Orestes now. He does not speak of her often, but when he does, it's never with hatred. It's worse. It's certainty. He doesn't doubt the act. He doesn't fear the consequence. He only questions what comes after. What happens to a man who kills his mother in a world built by gods who punish everything except war? He dreams of her sometimes, not screaming, not begging, just waiting, as if she already knows the final page of this myth. Because she does. Everyone does. That's the curse of stories this old. You know how it ends, but you keep watching, just in case someone dares to change it. Sleep now, but let your breath be shallow, because the silence is breaking. Orestes is coming home, and with him comes a decision no god dares to make. The city is not changed. The stones still sweat under the same sun. The same beggars wait by the same crumbling temple. The same smell of roasted lamb seeps through the alleyways like an old ghost with nowhere left to haunt. And above it all, carved into the hill like a curse written in stone. Mycenae, once a beacon, now a scar. You stand beside Orestes at the edge of the olive grove. The wind is dry. His cloak is dark. And in his eyes is the kind of silence that doesn't ask permission anymore. He doesn't speak. He doesn't blink. He just stares, as if the palace might blink first. Behind him walks Pylades, faithful as bone. He doesn't offer encouragement. He doesn't ask if this is still the plan, because men like Pylades don't follow orders. They follow convictions. And Orestes has carried this one like a stone in his gut for too long to drop it now. You follow them, up the winding path, past fig trees heavy with unpicked fruit, past a child playing with a wooden lion, humming a war song he doesn't yet understand. And then, the gates. Tall, familiar, indifferent. He remembers this archway. He passed beneath it once as a boy, holding his mother's hand, his other arm outstretched to stroke the flank of a horse carved from marble. He reaches for it now, and finds dust. The guards don't recognize him. Not at first. He's taller. His face no longer carries the soft edges of fear. But one of them stares a moment too long, then lowers a spear, and whispers the name like a prayer you say only when it's too late. Orestes. The other guard shifts his weight. She didn't say you'd return. She never does, Orestes replies, brushing past him. The halls are dim. The torches burn low, as if afraid to witness what's coming. The paintings on the walls still tell the same lies. Agamemnon, the victor. Clytemnestra, the faithful. Iphigenia, absent, like a forgotten whisper in a history curated by those who survived. But every step Orestes takes unwrites them. He doesn't knock. He doesn't announce himself. He walks through the palace like someone returning to the scene of their own birth. And in a way, he is. He finds her in the garden, kneeling by the rose bushes. No crown, no robe, just hands stained with soil and sweat. For a moment, she looks like any woman, weary, mortal, and then she sees him. And everything in her stillness becomes louder than screams. They don't speak, not at first, just silence and breath, and the weight of 10 years balancing between their gazes like a blade neither of them dares to lower first. She rises slowly, not like a queen, like a mother who just realized a ghost she'd buried never stopped walking. "I knew you'd come back," she says. "I never left," he replies. Her hands shake. She hides them in her sleeves. His don't. He lets them hang at his sides like verdicts. They stand like statues of their former selves. The boy who loved her, the woman who held him, both buried in the space between what she did and what he's come to do. And then, "Will you kill me, Orestes?" she asks. "You already know the answer," he says. She nods, and for the first time in years, she smiles, but not the smile of victory, not even resignation. It's the kind of smile you give when you see the sea after a decade of thirst. The smile that says, "Finally." You turn away, because what happens next isn't for your eyes. Not yet, because this isn't just a return. It's a reckoning, and reckoning requires stillness. Sleep now, but not deeply, because justice is about to speak. And sometimes it wears the voice of a son and the weight of a father's name. There is no gavel, no polished wood, no stone bench, just a quiet room with high ceilings and low light, where justice will not be served, but spilled. You walk with Orestes through the inner corridor, a corridor once used to house sacrifices to Artemis. Funny, isn't it, that the same gods who demanded a daughter's life will now bear witness to a son judging his mother. But the gods do not come today. They are absent, or maybe they are hiding, because what's about to happen is too much even for Olympus. Clytemnestra waits, not in chains, not in robes, in a simple linen dress, hair tied back, hands folded in her lap like a girl before confession. No guards. She knows they won't stop what's coming. She knows he won't let them. The room smells of old incense and damp stone. It was once a storeroom for olive oil. Now, it's a crucible where generations burn, where family is not remembered, but put on trial. Orestes steps inside. He doesn't look at her. Not yet. He looks at the walls, the stain in the corner, the flicker of the torchlight across the cracked tile, the statue of Apollo, long since chipped and faded. "Do you want to speak first?" he asks. "No," she says softly. "Then I will." He speaks not as a boy, but as the echo of a father's scream, a sister's ghost, a prophecy buried beneath 10 winters of silence. "You killed my father," he begins. She doesn't interrupt. "You say it was justice. I say it was yours. He sacrificed our sister." "Yes, and you sacrificed me. When you wrapped your hands in his blood, you wrapped my throat with it." His voice is calm, too calm, like the sea right before it swallows a ship whole. He walks toward her, step by step. "You didn't just kill a man. You taught me that killing can look like healing, if the story is told the right way." "It was the only way," she says. "Then what does that make me now?" There's silence, but it isn't empty. It's thick, like sap, like grief, like a verdict waiting to fall. He pulls out the blade. Not long, not shining, just sharp, the kind of blade that remembers its purpose. He kneels before her, and you flinch because you don't know what kind of mercy this is. Then he lifts the knife and sets it between them. "This is the justice you taught me," he says. "If I kill you, the curse ends. Or maybe it just begins again. Maybe I become him. Maybe I become you." She looks at him, not as a queen, not even as a mother, as a woman who has lived too long inside a myth that never had room for her soul. "Then choose," she whispers. "But don't pretend you're doing it for the gods." The room holds its breath, and for a moment, a sliver of something real passes between them. Not forgiveness, not even understanding, just recognition that this story was never written by them, only bled through them. And then he lifts the blade, and the torch flickers, and everything goes quiet, not because the gods decree it, but because history does not record mercy. It only records action. But what he does next is not written, not in any scroll, not in any myth, because sometimes the most violent thing you can do is walk away. You hear it as he leaves the room. His footsteps, steady, not triumphant, but changed. And behind him, she remains seated, hands still her lap, tears drying like salt on her cheek. And the knife? It stays on the floor, untouched, unfinished. Sleep now, but let this truth settle in your ribs. Sometimes justice is not about who dies. It's about who dares to live differently. The night is colder now, not from weather, from memory, from something older than gods, older than stone. You stand outside the palace walls. The stars have disappeared, not behind clouds. They've simply gone, as if they, too, refuse to witness what's about to rise. And from the earth below your feet, you begin to feel it, a vibration, not sound, something deeper, like the bones of the world shifting in their sleep. You follow Orestes as he walks into the open fields beyond Mycenae. He walks like a man who has just swallowed a storm, not sure if it will kill him, only sure that it belongs to him now. He breathes heavy, each step slower than the last, and then he stops, looks up, and says one word barely louder than the wind. They're coming. You don't see them at first. No horns, no wings, no screeching chorus, just heat, a sudden fever in the air, a smell like iron and rot. And then they appear, the Furies, also called the Erinyes. But that name is too clean, too Greek, too safe. They are not goddesses. They're not demons. They are what justice becomes when mercy fails. They do not fly. They drip, from the cracks in the earth, from shadows in torchlight, from the screams that no longer have mouths. 3 of them, eyes stitched shut, hair like burning worms, voices that scrape the inside of your skull like a rake over wet stone. They surround Orestes, and they do not ask questions, because they already know. He did not kill, one says, but he thought it, whispers another, and thought is enough, says the third. They circle him, not like predators, like priests performing a dark baptism. Their voices layer on top of one another until it's not language anymore, just accusation. Orestes doesn't run. He kneels, face pale, hands clenched, and he does not beg, because begging requires hope. And Orestes has long since left that behind. I spared her, he says. You delayed her death, one hisses. You kept your hand clean, spits another, but your mind reeked of judgment. We smell what men try to forget. They press their fingers to his shoulders. The skin blisters beneath their touch. They are not here to kill him. That would be mercy. They are here to haunt him, to curl around his ribs, to breathe into his dreams, to remind him every night that intention is a blade no less sharp than action. You feel it now, the world shifting, because this was supposed to be the ending. The sun returns. He makes the choice. The cycle is broken, but the Furies do not care for endings. They care for imbalance. They are not here for punishment. They are here for correction. Orestes rises slowly. His mouth opens, and for the first time in his life, he screams, not from pain, from knowing, from seeing them, from realizing that sparing the body does not spare the soul. And they follow him into every temple, every bed, every breath. They do not relent, because the myth has shifted, but the weight remains. You walk behind him. His footsteps stagger now. He speaks to no one, sleeps with eyes open, and still the world celebrates. They call him merciful. They call him noble. They do not hear the voices in his spine. They do not smell sulfur when he speaks. They do not know what he carries. Sleep now, but only if you can stomach silence, because the Furies are awake, and they do not rest. They wait. You wake in a temple, but it doesn't feel sacred. There is no choir, no incense, just marble, cold, cracked, and quiet. The statues here do not smile. They judge, their faces smooth and indifferent, as if sculpted by hands who never knew grief. You're not here to pray. You're here to witness, because Orestes has reached the final door, and it doesn't open with a key. It opens with a name. Apollo. The god appears slowly, not in fire, not in gold, in light, so pure it hurts. He doesn't stand. He hovers like something that forgot how to touch the earth. His face is beautiful in that cruel, ancient way. Lips too still, eyes too clear. The kind of beauty that doesn't comfort, only commands. Orestes falls to his knees, not from reverence, from exhaustion. His skin is gray, his eyes hollow. The Furies still cling to him like smoke. They hiss, coil, curse, but they cannot touch him here, not in Apollo's domain, not unless the god allows it. And that is what this is about. I did what you told me, Orestes says. I spared her, he adds, then falters. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I just changed the ending. Apollo tilts his head. He doesn't answer yet, because gods do not rush. They let mortals drown in their own doubt. The Furies grow louder. Their voices echo like wind through a crypt. He bears the blood, thought the death, dreamed it in the cradle. He broke the natural bond. Mother killer in spirit, filth beneath the olive root. Apollo finally speaks, not with warmth, but with authority. He obeyed me, and the room shudders, not metaphorically, literally. Cracks form in the floor. A brazier topples in the corner, because when Apollo speaks of obedience, the world remembers what it means to be divine. But the Furies do not flinch. Because they are older than him, older than light, older than order. Your laws are new, son-child, they hiss. Our justice is blood-born, and blood, once spilled, binds. Apollo steps forward now. His face is sunlit rage. You dare question my will? I who lit the first dawn. But their answer is simple. We were there before dawn, and now the trial begins. Not in words, in presence, in the weight of old justice and new mercy, crashing into each other like thunder and tide. Orestes watches, kneeling, no longer sure if he is a man, or a myth unspooling too fast. Apollo lifts his hand. He chose restraint, he says. He broke the cycle, the Furies shriek. He dreamed her death. He lit the match in his mind. He carries the rot in his marrow. Apollo glares. Then damn all minds and all futures. No, a voice says. And you turn, because that voice isn't divine. It's human. It's Athena. She arrives without sound, clad in bronze that gleams without flame. Eyes like still water, not calm, but deep. She walks between them, and the gods step back, because Athena doesn't scream. She decides. She looks at Orestes, then at the Furies, then at Apollo. This ends here. Let there be a trial, not one of fire, of reason. Orestes is silent, because what do you say when justice becomes a courtroom built by those who never bleed? Apollo nods. The Furies hiss, but Athena raises her hand, and all fall still. This is not the end. It is the question, one that Olympus itself must answer. What matters more, the act or the intention, the law or the heart, the blood or the mercy? Sleep now, but know that somewhere in the sky, a courtroom is rising, and gods are preparing to argue over the soul of a man who tried to stop a myth with his bare hands. You're no longer in Mycenae. The dirt has changed. The air is thinner. The sky above is not the sky of war or grief or kings. It is the sky of Athens. And beneath it, something is about to happen that no god can reverse. They gather atop the Areopagus, the hill of Ares, where blood was once spilled in chaos. And now, for the first time, blood will be weighed. Not spilled, weighed. You sit among mortals, but feel the breath of gods all around. Apollo, furious and glowing. The Furies, coiled like vipers in human skin. Athena, still and unmoving. A statue carved from logic and lightning. And in the center, Orestes, his face pale, his body trembling, his hands no longer sure if they hold shame or salvation. This is the trial, but not just for him, for all of us, for what comes next. Athena stands. Her voice isn't loud. It's final. We will hear, and we will decide. 12 jurors are chosen, men of Athens, neither kings nor priests. Because Athena does not trust power. She trusts balance. Apollo speaks first, and when he does, the birds fall silent. Orestes acted at my word, he says. He was commanded by divinity, not to destroy, but to restore, not to kill, but to close. The jurors murmur. Some nod, some narrow their eyes. The air holds a tension so thick, you feel your lungs laboring. Then come the Furies, and they do not speak in verse. They accuse, with eyes that bleed, with voices that wound, with truths no one wants to hear. He did not need to strike her. He needed only to desire her death. And that desire is now in him. Forever. They speak of Iphigenia, of Agamemnon, of cycles wrapped around generations like ropes soaked in sorrow. The house of Atreus was built on blood. We are not here to destroy it. We are here to remember. Orestes does not speak. He does not plead. He just lifts his head and waits. Because he knows there are no words that can unwind what was done. Only choice. The jurors vote. 12 hands. 12 fates. one by one, and when they are done, the count is even. 6 to condemn, 6 to absolve, a draw, and all eyes turn to Athena. She steps forward, and the world pauses. Not just the hill, not just the gods, the world. She lifts her hand, and with it, the weight of all vengeance and all mercy, all myths and all men. I cast a final vote, she says. Her eyes find Orestes, and her voice does not tremble. I vote for acquittal. And just like that, the Furies howl. The sky tears with their fury. But they are bound now, not by chains, by law. Athena turns to them, calm as a mountain. You are not dismissed, she says. You are transformed. They hiss, snarl, recoil. But she continues. You will no longer be creatures of torment. You will be guardians of justice. Feared, yes, but honored. The Furies tremble, and for the first time in a long, burning history of vengeance, they weep, not blood, water, tears, and so they are renamed, the Eumenides, the kindly ones, the protectors of balance, born from rage, matured into memory. The trial ends, but something greater begins. Not peace, not perfection, but the idea of justice. Not as revenge, but as resolution. A whisper on the hill that becomes a voice. A voice that one day builds courts and scrolls and laws. But for now, it is just a breath. Let us choose differently. Sleep now, and as your eyes close, know this. Not all myths end in blood. Some end in birth. And the greatest ones? They make you hope. You're back in the tomb. Not in Mycenae. Not in Athens. In that liminal space between memory and forgetting, where all myths return eventually. The mask lies before you again. Golden. Silent. Its features frozen in that expression that isn't quite a smile, isn't quite grief. Just something stuck. You sit across from it. And for the first time, you do not flinch. Because now you know, this mask never belonged to Agamemnon. And yet it did. Just as it now belongs to you. You reach out and brush the dust from its cheek. Not reverently, tenderly, the way one brushes dust from a photograph of someone they no longer love, but can't quite hate. There's a crack near the left eye. You didn't notice it before, but it's there, and it says more than any inscription ever could. That time has touched this face, that even legends can fracture. Outside, the cicadas sing. The sun has begun to rise. But here, inside this chamber, there is no time. Just stone and silence. Just a man once called king, whose legacy bled into theater, into temples, into your bedtime story. You remember them all now. Iphigenia, frozen on the altar. Clytemnestra, blade in hand and fire in her voice. Orestes, walking through judgment into something that looks like a future. You remember the Furies, no longer shrieking vengeance, but whispering guidance beneath the roots of courts and conscience. And you remember the trial, the moment myth became law. But here's what they don't tell you. Even justice wears a mask. And sometimes, when the world isn't looking, that mask slips. And underneath, not a face, a mirror. You pick it up, hold it in your hands. Feel its weight. It is heavier than you imagined. Not because it's gold, but because it's full of voices. The girl whose death became strategy. The woman whose rage became villainy. The boy whose mercy became madness. The god who demanded it all. You turn it over. There's no inscription, no name, because the truth is, the mask was never meant to tell the truth. It was meant to hide it. And yet, here you are, centuries later, listening, feeling, knowing. You set it down gently, not in reverence, in release. You do not need to carry it out of the tomb, because now it carries you. You walk out into the dawn. The stones are still warm, the ruins still sleeping. And as you step away, the tomb sighs behind you. A breath, not a grief, but of relief. because someone finally came not to steal, or dig, or prove, but to remember. Sleep now, and as you drift into dreams, know this: the past does not demand your worship, only your witness. And sometimes, to remember a mask is the most human thing we can do, because when we remember, we begin to remove our own.